dollhouse peeps. So if you watched the first part of the dollhouse kitchen remodel that I'm doing, you might have noticed the stone floor that's in the kitchen. I didn't really talk about it much in that first video, so we're going to talk about it more in this one. And it's going to be probably a short video. So anyway, what I did was I used some joint compound and a toothpick basically, and it was hands down the easiest floor installation that I've ever done for a dollhouse. I installed it directly to the surface of my dollhouse, but you can apply it to like a thick cardstock if you wanted, and then later you can just remove it if you wanted to change it out at any time in the future. So anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this using my greenhouse or my conservatory that I'm going to be adding to my current dollhouse. So that'll be the sample that I'll be showing off today. So anyway, the greenhouse that I'm going to be using, I actually bought it from Hobby Lobby, and I'm converting it to the conservatory that I'll be using for my dollhouse. And I just chose one that would fit the scale and that had a really easy removable glass, which you're seeing here in the photo. I also bought these little blocks that are 2x2 blocks because I want this conservatory to sit on those and kind of be the same height at the dollhouse. But also later I want to add a moat or some sort of pond or water feature around this piece. And actually I'm super excited to do that at some point in the future. Hopefully I can get this done so I can move on to that. So I'm modifying my dollhouse, of course, in order to do this. And I'm going to be removing a portion that would have been the kitchen wall. So I measured the greenhouse, and then I used a hacksaw to cut away the wood and make this big square that you're seeing here. There were 2 windows there, so I had to cut a portion of them off the top and then place those back in so that I would have that nice square or rectangle shape so that the conservatory can just fit right up against the house. And then you can kind of see here in this photo kind of what it will look like from the interior looking into the conservatory from the kitchen. I did have my hubster cut off this handle for me that came with that little piece that I bought. I was a little nervous to work with that, and so anyway, he did it and took like 2 seconds, as you can see. So the next step will be making sure that the floor is just clean of any debris or dust, and you can just wipe that up or vacuum it up, whatever. And so this here in the photo is the joint compound that I used. It just so happened that my hubby Randy had this already in our garage, but it's very inexpensive and you can get it at any hardware store in much smaller containers than what you're seeing here. The consistency of this product is very similar to thick icing. So if you've ever icing a cake, this will be super easy, of course, for you. And it does have a little bit of a chemical smell, but that will go away once the compound is dry. So basically I just took a big old spoonful of this. There's a little bit, it's watery a little bit at the top when you first open it, so you can kind of just mix that in. And then I just plopped it right on down on the surface and kind of started spreading it out because you don't want it to be really too thick. Otherwise, when you start making the stone, it's going to be a little bit difficult and it will keep sealing itself back up. So then I just used a little trowel, or in this case, my little cheese cutter, and I just even it out to give an even smoother surface. But I don't want this to be too perfectly smooth because we're attempting to kind of give a look of natural stone, so I don't want it to be perfect, and I'm not going for perfection, which is fantastic because that would be incredibly difficult to achieve. Now what I do is I just grab a paper towel and a toothpick. You could also use like a dull pencil or something like that. Anything that kind of has like a point so you can start etching in your stone. I'm not using a pattern. I'm just free-handing it here because I really want it to feel very random. But you could actually print up a pattern off of the internet and then just kind of use that as your guide as you go through, knowing that this type of material is pretty forgiving. So if you make a mistake, you can just kind of smooth over it with your finger even, and then redraw your line. It's not incredibly fast drying, so if you do make a mistake, you could just go back over it. But if you do a really thin layer, it will dry pretty fast, so just be careful about that. So once it's kind of semi-dry, you can go back over it with your toothpick or your pencil and re-grout any lines that may have pushed back together or corners that are connected which happens, and it's super easy to do that. And then you can just vacuum up those little crumbs. Or when it's completely dry and you do that, you're going to start sanding the floor really nice and thin and even, and this will really start making your floor look fantastic. And then you can just vacuum up all those crumbs and all the dust, and then you can really see any areas that you might want to improve on. I can see a few areas even now looking at it that I could go back over if I wanted to. It'll depend on how I feel about that. But anyway, just go ahead and vacuum up any of those little crumbs, and then when it's completely dry, you can begin to paint it. So I went with like a yellow putty color as my base, and I did a wash instead of a full paint, which just means that I added a ton of water to the paint. And then while that was still wet, I did the same thing with some brown. I watered it down, but I did make sure that I went around the outer edges and made them a little bit darker, because in a real setting outside especially, you'll find that dirt and grime kind of build up in the corners of spaces. And also, those are the areas where either furniture would sit most likely, or tables or something along those lines, or plants in this case. And those areas would be a little bit darker just because people aren't walking on those spaces. So lighter in the middle, darker to the outside. And then once I did that, I just added just a little hint of cream paint here and there just to make it kind of look more natural, because stone has several different colors in it. And then once it's completely dry, at your discretion, you can seal it. I sealed it in the kitchen and kind of gave it a sheen, but I'm leaving it alone for this outdoor setting. And I'm just gonna I might seal it later, just depends on if I like the way it looks. So for the kitchen though, I did seal it with Mod Podge, but you can use like a varnish sealer or whatever you're comfortable with, that's fine. And then once it dries, it looks like this. I went with a lighter stone outside than I did in the kitchen, just to break things up a little bit and make it a little different. And that's basically it. Pretty cut and dry, very simple. So if you have any questions, or if you've tried this technique, I'd love to hear about it. So please comment below. And I'm still working on the next video of the next section of the kitchen remodel. So please look for that video. Stay tuned in for that. And please subscribe. So that video should be out in a couple weeks. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.